Hello, welcome to this Sogeti Labs webinar. Today we will discuss the evolution of conversational AI. Good to know that all attendees are on mute. You can ask your questions in the questions box of the GoTo platform, and we'll have a Q&A at the end of the interview. Today we have two guests, Balaji Rajagopalan. He leads the global automation and AI practice for Sogeti. And Vijay Rakani, who leads the chatbot practice in Sogeti, India, and delivers chatbot offerings across Europe and North America. So welcome both. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Jolien.
We will start with a question to our audience straight away, just to get an idea of how you feel about the topic. You can go to menti.com and type in the code 810020. And answer this question for us. Have you used a chatbot before? Pretty simple question. So I'm curious to know what answers there will be. There's always a bit of delay before we start seeing results. Here we go. One says yes, one says no. Slowly changing. 15 to 3, so the majority of our audience have used the chatbot before, which is good news, I think. It's always good to have experience as a user. But what I'd be curious to know is, could we see an example straight away, Vijay, of a chatbot in action?
Sure, Jolien. Okay, so let me know once my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Hello, everyone. I would now like to introduce to you Albert, which is this intelligent chatbot, right? So let me now, have a conversation with it. So let me ask some interesting questions to it. And as you see, Albert has responded back with the answer. And as you also see on the screen, the response from Albert, right, and even how she's responded back, right?
It's quite a specific hobby.
Yep. So very interesting answers coming up is what it eats for, right? For its lunch or dinner. Let's ask something, maybe a joke from it. Okay, we'll speak about the Turing test in a bit, but yeah. Okay, so yep, that's a little bit about Albert, which kind of gives you some interesting witty answers, and hopefully you can also get in touch with Albert. I will share across this link with you, and you can see how it's able to answer a lot of your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Vijay. I think it makes very clear what a chatbot can do. Then I wonder which were the first chatbots that were created?
Right, can we have the screen come up, please? So chatbots have been in evolution for many, many years, Jolien, and as you can see, it goes back almost 70 years. The Turing test was designed to identify whether you're talking to a person or you're talking to a machine, and from there, the next one, the ELIZA chatbot, was invented by Joseph in 1966. That's almost like 60 years back. Alice, which is a universal language processing chatbot, came a little later in the 90s. So you've been seeing chatbots in operation in a very primitive form, of course, many, many years back, with the Watson and others coming up later. But Vijay, you want to throw some light on the latest developments?
Sure, Balaji. So like Balaji was mentioning, chatbots have been there since 1950s, right? But what we've seen in the last decade is a host of interesting solutions come up. And what you see is more of voice-based assistance, right? And a lot of evolution of the products. So the first one to join this was IBM Watson way back in 2006, right? With features such as integrating with data, indexing and answering questions from huge amount of data sources. This was one breakthrough in the chatbot evolution. And then we had Apple come up with its own virtual assistant, which was Siri, right? And a part of the iOS technologies. Now, Google also had its initial product known as Google Now, which was integrated with the Google search, right? So if you would have done a Google search, right, there was this voice icon that was available on the Google Now, which would basically index and give you all the information that you would need, right? But this got after 2016, this was then replaced with Google Assistant, which was more matured, right, product, and so it gave way to the Google Assistant. And then we had the other, products like Amazon, Alexa, and Microsoft Cortana, which provided the right, AI and machine learning, making chatbots not just answering dummy questions, but even, with a flavor of answering contextual-based information back to the user. And finally, what you saw in 2016 was the Facebook Messenger bots, which gave a lot of, help back to businesses to be able to create bots, and available on Facebook. And as of 2019, there are around 300,000 Facebook Messenger bots. So yeah, that's the evolution over the years.
So chatbots have been around for a long time, really, and there has been a huge evolution, I think, in what they can do. So could you show us the difference between a simple and a really intelligent chatbot?
Sure, Yolene, I'll try and see what we can do if we can move to the next screen. Ideally, you should have chatbots which are made very interesting and intuitive, as well as which use a certain amount of artificial intelligence. On your right, what you can see is a basic chatbot which somebody comes, logs in and says, I've got a headache, and it asks you a series of structured questions and describes a paracetamol or an aspirin to be purchased, and the total size of the shopping itself is €3, and the transaction is completed, as you can see here. Now we are going to see a very intelligent chatbot to your left, which is in green, and you can see Sovia is now going to talk to the same customer about how phishing can help take your mind out of conflict and stress. And the customer is now, as you can see, more engaged in the conversation. It's not transactional. It's more emphatic. So, the bot is asking, the lake requires you to have some personal fishing gear. Would you like to help you buy it? So you see the chatbot is now engaging in an upsell. So if you can go next, you will see more examples of what's happening. So the bot is now selling fishing as a palliative or as a way of alleviating stress, and then it moves on to say, you need an additional fish hook, and then gives him example as to why that purchase is needed. And then if you go next, you'll find that there is a need for a boat. So you must have a fishing rod. So the upsell is continuing to increase. So the customer is now fully engaged in this conversation. The customer is ready to buy this. Now, because of the huge value of purchase which is being done, the bot is authorized to give a discount of 10%. So again, this is not a programmatic display. This is AI at work in the background, which says if you meet a certain set of rules, you're allowed to take certain decisions up to a certain level. It's not programmed to say if X then Y, if Z then L, and so on. Go next. So you will see that this is a very, very engaging bot, and the bot continues to converse with the customer, and it will then say that you need a twin engine boat, and then it'll sell him a 4x4 in order to carry the boat to the lake, and finally you will see what the bill comes to. And now it's selling him a tent. So there you go. So €3 versus 933,000 euros. That's the power of artificial intelligence, which you can. And of course, this is a good overstretched example. I agree that the idea is to make your bot engaging, to have empathy, to have some amount of sentiment analysis, so that it can really converse with your customer and not give you structured answers.
Yeah, I think it does make your point very clear that there's a difference between just a simple solution to a simple problem, but by getting more information, the bot can advise differently and find out how to do well, quite a substantial upsell there. That's really interesting. Next up is another Menti question, where we'd like to ask our audience. You can go back to menti.com and the code will appear on screen. Yep. So it's 810020. And we'd like to know from our audience, what have you used a chatbot for? A grocery app, a flight booking web app, a banking app, or another? And I would also be interested to know, because I see that the other box is going up really quick, what the other was. You can type it in the questions box if you like. Grocery, flight booking, and banking is going up in similar ways. 3, 4, and 6. I think banking is popular as well.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope some of our audience will put in the questions box what the other means. It could be really interesting, I think. Okay. So something else, I also would like to know about the vendor landscape of chatbots. How does this work?
Sure, Yolene. Can we see the slide, please? Yeah. So the typical landscape within a chatbot, right, would consist of various providers that we already have. If you could just click through, yes. So the biggest provider that we have is Google, with its matured product as Dialogflow, which has done a lot of implementations on various spaces, whether it is healthcare, as you would see, or on telecom, or on technology, right? And you see some of the key customers there, whether it's Verizon or the other ones that you see. And then next in line is the AWS, having its the chatbot technology using Amazon Lex, right? And they also have some of their key customers in technology or the healthcare, right? And after that, we have the Microsoft and the Core.ai, which are having very much matured products. I would like to give you a little interesting, kind of statistics about Core.ai, having a lot of products and suites available across for not just end customers, but also for employees, where you could build some enterprise chatbots for the the employees. You also have some interesting ones which replace the customer service desk, right? So they have a host of products which are available there. And then we do have IBM. We spoke about it. It started off in 2006, and now it's a matured product which has a lot of features and capabilities integrating with AI, and also features like Watson Discovery that helps in ingesting or indexing huge amount of documents and then give real-time information to users. So I would say there are a lot of players available within this landscape, and it's only getting matured over a period of time.
And do we in Sogeti work with all of these vendors, or do we have a preference?
So Sogeti has executed and in fact done a lot of implementations across different technology stacks, whether it's using IBM Watson, for which we've already done one of the biggest implementations for a tax and auditing firm, right? And the other ones like Microsoft and AWS, Google, we have done various implementations across different sectors, right? So I would say it's a uniform mix of different all these vendors that you see on the screen where we've implemented for our customers.
Okay, well, it's great that we have this diverse experience. Maybe you could show us some cool and innovative chatbots, some examples.
So what you can see out here, Yolene, is some of the innovative chatbots which we have come across. There is something called the endurance bot, which has been designed to help Alzheimer's patients, and doctors and family members can review communication logs. They can identify if there is any decline in the memory function, or if there is any intervention which they need to run. That's a great example of how you can improve the mental health, and you can improve the patient's experience using chatbots. Similarly, with children, the Disney bot can engage their fans with in a gamified model, and it can use characters like Lieutenant Hobbs to investigate those mysteries, and it can actually take you through a complete journey, looking at it from the eye of a child. And the UNICEF bot is more of a data collection bot, which you can find there. It focuses on getting polls, and it regularly sends out polls on social issues. It's widely prevalent, about 60 plus countries, and it's available via numerous messaging and social media. So these are some of the very innovative. These are just three. I can go on, but I think in the interest of time, we thought these three would be relevant to the audience.
Yeah, I think they're really interesting, and it also shows us the wide range of different use cases that chatbots are.
And if you see all three, Yolene, just to mention, the three examples we chose are all non-commercial, primarily, more of an engaging. So commercial, we all know that there are many, many commercial uses.
Yeah, and I think before we move to the next Menti question, a lot of our audience put in the question box the types of chatbots that they have already used. So that may be interesting to do a quick walkthrough, because we have three customer services, booking hotel rooms, questions on a website, another customer support and help desk. So I think that's a used one. Escape room games, also interesting. And the food ordering app.
Yeah. So you're going to see more transactions happening on bots. So my prediction is, in the market, you're going to see the movement of e-commerce from websites to chatbots. That's going to happen.
Okay. That's an interesting development. So next question to our audience is, could you describe your experience with chatbots? And then, of course, we don't mean the use cases, because we already asked you that, but how did you experience it as a user? And you can go back to menti.com. This will appear as a word cloud, so you can just type in words, anything that comes to mind about your experience as a user with a chatbot. Here we go. Sometimes frustrating, very engaging, quick, low maturity, I saw. Quick and limited are the two big ones. Not so efficient. It looks like there's still some work to do here.
Yes.
Not everybody is has the same enthusiasm yet.
No, it's actually very refreshing to see this, because this is true. This just tells us that the market is wide open for system integrators like us to come in and make a very intelligent proposition on chatbots.
I think that's good to know. And also, what my next question would be, so what would be the next generation in chatbots? How can we make this experience better?
Sure.
We'll let this Menti complete, then yeah. Then go on to the slide. Yeah, go on, Vijay.
Sure. Okay, so I think we saw quite a lot of information there, that chatbots, while they are doing good, there's a lot in the market, like Balaji was mentioning. So first, let's have a look at what is currently available, right, within the whole chatbot landscape, right? So what you see first is an intent classification. So when you put in a question to a chatbot, right, it goes through its repository of questions that the model is trained with and tries to understand the intent of the question, and then gives a relevant response back to it, right? And the second one is extracting the entities, which would be the key, objects within that particular utterance, right? So it could be something like when I'm trying to ask a question of booking a flight, right? So your flight becomes your entity. So it extracts those key elements within that utterance, right? And what you see on the right-hand side is, the semantic, basically trying to understand what the user is again asking, removing the entire noise, and then giving back a relevant response. And so these are some of the key, features that we do see. And what are lexicons? Lexicons are basically this whole huge repository of main keywords through which you could scale your bot. So what chatbots do basically is they maintain this whole dictionary of keywords, and then they kind of map their utterances to these lexicons to be able to be answer the questions more effectively. If we could go to the next slide, we'd see how chatbots journey would look like. So what started off with like a keyword search of being able to answer questions on which the model is trained for, is what the initial start of it was, right? Where it would index some kind of content and then reply back answers based on what it has already indexed. The next part of it is the semantic search, which is where your NLP comes into play, right? It answers variations of the questions, trying to understand, filter out the noise, and then give you the relevant answer back to it, right? And then what do we mean by contextual search then, right? So here is where the power of machine learning comes in, right? So based on the user's information, his past history, on how he has used maybe a portal, you kind of give him a personalized experience, right? And then answer his questions. So that's the next evolution. And finally, we have something called as cognitive search, which is where we already see things moving towards. So things like where you have images or you have a lot of unstructured content, you kind of extract the metadata and the important information from that, and then be able to answer the user from that whole huge volume of data. And to cite an example, we already have in fact an interesting chatbot, a virtual assistant called as Daisy, which is being developed, which uses cognitive search to be able to pull up information from a vast amount of data set.
So to add, to add to what Vijay said, Yolene, what I think will happen is going forward, the graph which you see here is also correlating to the amount of time a customer or a user of the chatbot is going to spend talking to the chatbot. So the earlier you are in the evolution, the smaller the conversation, and the person, either an employee or a customer, is going to get some limited answers and then log off or ask for a speaking to an agent. As it gets more cognitive, as it gets more intelligent, you will see the conversations becoming longer, and eventually you'll reach a point where your chatbot will be able to detect sarcasm and reply in kind.
That's really interesting, Balaji. Also, I'd like to know what this looks like when we implement it with the client, because it becomes more complex as well to implement when there's more user interaction and the technology gets to be more elaborated.
Sure. So if you see, I like to take the example of a functioning chatbot, which we have developed for one of the large, financial services or tax and auditing services company based out of North America. Now the customer is, already on a journey to create an intelligence. So the first question which you ask the customer is, what's your intent? What would you like to address using a bot. And then, of course, based on the answers, then you can determine whether you want a thematic chatbot, or you want a structured bot, or you want a different kind of, all-in-one jack of all trades kind of a bot. So you have different varieties which are possible to be created. And this is what I always believe in, Yulin, that just because something is simple does not mean it's easy. So you see that understanding a chatbot is very simple. It's very simple to say, I want a chatbot, but getting the chatbot to deliver the kind of user immersive experience is not going to be easy. So what we created for this customer is basically a solution which consists of an analytical dashboard, feedback mechanism. It has integrated automation to ServiceNow. It's got some really cool third-party integrations with Concur, EMS, and Exchange, and so on. And of course, we used a multitude of technologies, with the primary one being IBM Watson, supported by Java, Redis, and Maven. So this is an example. It took us about 8 months for the first release, and I'll, of course, in the next slide walk you through the architecture, or Vijay will.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting to know. So in a pragmatic way, what was our delivery methodology and what did the architecture look like?
Sure, Vijay, you want to take that?
Yes, Balaji. Okay, so let's now try to understand, how we delivered this whole engagement, right? As you see on the screen, we followed an agile-based approach to deliver this whole engagement, right? And this was a complete 24-month cycle, which we, had the chatbot evolve over this whole period. So what started off with, finding information on the chatbot, which would be like answering some simple questions. When is the what is the holiday list for, say, 2020, or how do I claim my expenses for Uber, right? So those were like basic FAQ kind of questions that we started building this bot with. And as a next step towards that, we made it more helpful to the users to be able to perform some of their tasks. It would be something like where I am traveling and I need to book my meeting room, right? And on the fly, with the chatbot available on the mobile app, I could go ahead and launch the bot and be able to book a meeting room, or be able to claim my expenses on Concur, right? So what started off as an FAQ bot became something that would help an end user in completing majority of his tasks, and then finally, automating some of his regular activities using some workflows. And what you see below is a complete cycle of the implementation, right? So in a typical agile project, we would have some discovery workshops, right, where we build the entire conversations, we design it, and then we have a typical sprint cycle where we build the chatbot on the platform, the NLP platform. And like Balaji was mentioning, the one that we used here was IBM Watson, right? And we integrated with a lot of third-party systems, the one that you had seen in the earlier screen, whether it was with the meeting systems or with the ServiceNow, right? And we had a very detailed or process-oriented approach for doing the testing using Botium, right? And we also finally had the application deployed to the higher environments like the UAT and the production. So this was the overall methodology that we followed. So if you go to the next slide, you'd see the overall architecture of the chatbot. What happens behind the scenes when the user is conversing with the bot, right? So at the heart of it is actually the NLP component, right? This could be your IBM Watson, your Lewis from the Microsoft, or any technology stack that you would use. And what it does is it extracts from the user questions the intents and the entities, and would either get it from its knowledge base, or be able to fetch that data from a third-party application and then get the relevant information back to the user. And that is what you see happening behind the hoods of this chatbot in terms of its architecture. So Yolene, that's what the overall architecture looks like for this chatbot implementation.
Yeah, thank you, Vijay. That's a very clear overview. And after this deep dive, we'd like to go back to the future to a question to our audience, which is, what do you think is the future for chatbots? So you can go back to menti.com again, use the same code, and pick any of these three. So do you think it will be mainly a sentiment analyzer, detect emotions, or monitor health? Which of the three? Of course, there's different applications or use cases as well, but if you have to pick from these three, what would you say is the most promising one? Okay, about half says detect emotions.
So you can see, Yolene, that the thing which it is currently not as capable of is the one which the audience wants it to become. So if you see,
Yeah.
right now, the chatbots are not that great at detecting emotions.
And is this also what we can expect, do you think, Balaji?
Yes, it is bound to evolve to a state where, as I said, in my mind, in the next 5 years, chatbots will be able to detect sarcasm or tell you a joke, laugh with you. That's a significant jump from where we are today. Today, a chatbot engages with a customer for maybe 5, and this has been my experience too when it comes to banking or whether it comes to holidaying. You are engaging with the chatbot maybe for 5 or 6 questions. After that, it becomes stuck in a rut. It is not able to move on simply because it's coded that way. It's kind of constrained by its programming. Now you got to unshackle it from its programming and let it learn and respond over a period of time. The other big future of chatbots which I see happening is companies which will train their bots in a certain industry, and the bot will be very industry niche specific, but it will come with phenomenal amount of training. You will get a trained bot. You do not have to buy an untrained bot. This will be the next big evolution.
Okay.
Yep. So as you see out here, so this is something, yeah, I wanted to talk about this. Some of the things which today we are not seeing is ability to interpret images, right? Sentiment analysis is there in bits and pieces, but it's not prevalent across all platforms. Emotion detection, I would say it's almost non-existent today. Counseling, couple of attempts have been made to have bots which can replace humans in terms of mental health counseling or things like that, or employee assistance programs, but those have not really taken off. But the future really is in having bots which can look at all of these, whether it is interpretation, whether it is analytical ability of sentiments, emotion detection, ability to offer solutions to certain niche or key problems. And at the same time, you can have bots which can have the commercial side integrated, like it can incorporate payments, it can process refunds, it can file your in a few clicks, it can file your tax returns, it can draw information from your source of records and file your tax returns. And of course, self-learning with machine learning and natural language processing is going to be a big part of the future.
I think it's very interesting, and there's a lot still to come in this chatbot area. So certainly a space to watch. I also know that Vijay, you have a lot of factual knowledge about this. Is there any interesting trivia that you would like to share?
Sure, Yolene. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So as you see here, firstly, I would like to share some interesting facts about what users actually like about chatbots, right? You would be surprised to know that one of the most important things based on user feedback that has been taken is chatbots basically help in answering users 24/7, which is one of the biggest advantages that they believe helps them. and the ability to talk to them in multiple languages is also one of their biggest advantages, right? And based on the data which has been collected, it is found that around 230,000 transactions have been serviced by customer service desks, right, in the last year, and a 40 to 60% kind of operational cost could be reduced by just implementing chatbots. So that's the power which still has to be unleashed. It's a $1.3 trillion kind of revenue or business that is definitely to be tapped to get chatbots more used across businesses. What you also see is that in 2019, like I was mentioning earlier, there were around 300,000 bots which were only launched on Facebook to be able to answer user questions. And in businesses such as H&M, they would actually help in driving the business by providing users with personalized recommendations, right? So the power is there. You could, like Balaji was mentioning, it's not just an FAQ, as it was earlier. And definitely with the power of machine learning, AI, the journey ahead is quite positive, I would say, for the chatbots. So, Balaji, would you like to add something from a forecast and prediction standpoint?
I think you covered it. So while all of these numbers are very, very attractive, we will still wait to see how the market adopts this. What I said, I still stand by it, Yolene and Vijay, that you will see bots becoming more commercial. You will see multilingual being one of the key features of bots. And we have to overcome this transactional behavior of bots to make it self-learning, and it has to be more conversational. It cannot be transactional. It cannot be just a structured programming. If X is equal to this, then Y, and so on. It'll move into a self-learning, mature, more conversational mode.
Okay, I think if we move to the questions, we have quite a few, and the first is also about transactional examples. It's from Thomas Wesseling, and he asks, on the transactional bot examples, would we not need to ask the customer for some kind of consent before processing a transaction?
Absolutely. So all of these bots will need to have security end to end, and also you will find that in certain types of scenarios, the transactional bot will need a two-factor authentication. So these bots will eventually have to come built with two-factor authentication. Consent is one. So you will get bots which will say at the end, do you consent to me storing this data, or do you wish that I forget this transaction? And at the end of it, it will wipe it out if you say I don't consent. And similarly, when you want to complete a commercial transaction, it will ask you, would you like me to send a specific code to your registered mobile number or email address? And then it will do a two-factor authentication to know that it's you are who you say you are.
Okay, clear.
Just to add to what Balaji has mentioned, we in fact have already implemented that for the same use case that Balaji was showcasing for the tax and auditing customer. We do have that authentication already in place.
Oh, that's good to know. So we have the experience as well on how this would work. Thomas has a second question. Are there also overviews of conversational platform vendors?
Can you repeat that? I didn't quite get the question.
Are there also overviews of conversational platform vendors?
Vijay, you want to take that?
Yeah, so I believe we did cover the conversational platform vendors, the ones which were around Google Dialogflow, or whether it was the IBM Watson, right, and Lex. So we could definitely, have definitely another session, maybe covering all those aspects, because there are quite a lot of features, pros and cons, which are available, right, against each of these platforms. So maybe a couple of them which I can, kind of highlight at the moment is IBM Watson is having a capability where, you could ingest maybe documents, right? And you could search across any of those content and then answer, the user back from that. That capability is right now not available within the Amazon Lex platform, right? It's nascent, and even within Dialogflow, you do have features where you can integrate with, say, the voice capability, right? We in fact even had a very interesting demo where what we did was we built a chatbot on Google Dialogflow, which was completely available on voice. And what we did was the user would ask some questions to the bot, right, about something, and if it was not able to answer that, it would then hand over to a human. So I would say a mix of features across the different platforms. Some of them, having kind of more advanced capabilities in certain areas, and then the others, like the voice ones, available in others. So based on your customer, needs and requirements, you could definitely choose the right platform. We can definitely provide you with some information as against what is available against each of it.
Sure. And where would it be available? Is it on Know Now portal, for example, or if Thomas would want to know more, where could he find information?
So from the chatbot perspective, we do have our offering, which kind of explains our entire capability and maturity over building these enterprise-grade chatbots. We'll definitely point out to the Know Now link, which you can definitely download and go through some of our knowledge repository links and get your questions answered there.
Great. Good. Thank you.
And Yolene, one thing which I wanted to tell you, what's in the works is we would like to drink our own champagne. So Vijay is in the process of creating a chatbot to respond to queries about chatbots.
That's great. That's great. And I also like the expression of drink your own champagne, much better than eat your own dog food.
I know.
Somehow. Much better. We have a question about natural language processing by David. He asks, can you describe the dependency on natural language processing and working with unstructured data? Context appears to be the hurdle.
That is true. And I can maybe give you an example about IBM Watson, right? This is, again, I'll quote back to the one that we were discussing about the use case, which we did for tax and auditing customer. We use the tool called as IBM Watson Discovery, where we kind of took the unstructured content and helped the bot, ask some. We asked the bot back some questions with respect to the content that was ingested. What we found was, while certain questions were being answered, contextually, some of them, were kind of not really there. With a low confidence score, we could see that the overall relevance of the answers, weren't up to the mark, I would say. Now, with that said, there is a lot of work going on even within these various platforms like IBM Watson and Microsoft, and they're coming up with their new versions of these products with more maturity to be able to get there. Definitely, IBM Watson would be something that we would see in 2021 with more enhanced capabilities for indexing these unstructured content and giving, more importantly, relevant answers. So that will be something which we'll definitely be to watch out for.
So, Yolene, I want to add something there. You all heard this, this sentence that data is the new oil, and you need to depend on data, and that's your biggest asset today. You're seeing that in action now. The way you harness your data, the way you take this structured, semi-structured, unstructured data, and the ability for a customer to train their bots using a combination of this data is what is going to make that bot very intelligent or not intelligent at all. See, by birth, by design, that bot can perform all the functions which a very intelligent bot can do. It's how you train that bot. If you spend good amount of resources intelligently, with the right amount of data to train it, you will have a very valuable asset.
So that's the key there. Yeah, clear. There's also for David, if you want to know more about natural language processing, I did an interview with Paul Verhaar about only that topic a while ago, and you can find it on labs.sogeti.com under the webinars tab. So that's where you can view the recording. And that's a deep dive into natural language processing, how it works, and what the latest developments are. So that could be interesting for you as additional content, I think. Next question is from Amir, who asks, what was the basis for user acceptance tests and how did you perform them on the bot?
Okay.
So I think that's for you.
Yep. Okay, so this is where I think various companies kind of struggle because a typical expectation from a chatbot engagement is I ask any question to the chatbot and it should answer it even at the first go when you launch the bot, which is something that really doesn't happen at the first go. And that's the reason why it's very important to educate the users, the customers, about two terms that I'd mentioned here, which is called the accuracy and the coverage. The coverage is where a chatbot could answer a question, right? Whether it answers correctly or not is a different topic, but the coverage determines whether your chatbot is able to answer that question, right? And the accuracy is whether the chatbot has answered your question correctly. Now, typical expectation from a customer is that both of these should be 100%, which means I ask any question or any variation of it, or it could be a complete, a 360-degree different question, and it should still answer it. Now, that is something which should be correctly aligned and expected with the customer. And what we did is we kind of set up a metrics, something like, a 90% on the coverage of the bot and around 70 to 75% on the accuracy of the bot when we initially launched it, right? And then we kind of, like Balaji was mentioning, you kind of train the model, make it more mature to be able to address, the variations of those questions, and then arrive at a better accuracy. But at a first go, from a UAT sign-off or standpoint, I would say you kind of set realistic expectations with the customer that you're looking at around the 70 to 75% from an accuracy standpoint.
Okay, I think next question is related, and I think you already in part answered it. It's by Tanmaya, who asks, how do we test the chatbot? So is there more to it that you'd like to discuss? Yeah.
Yes. So there are various tools that are available, for testing, right? And here I would like to again throw an example wherein testing around, say, 100 odd utterances would be easy. You could go ahead and you could have a couple of testers do it manually and complete it. But when you're talking about a scale of around thousands of utterances, it's humanly not possible to do that. And that's where the power of automation testing comes in. We have implemented, like I was showing in my earlier slide with respect to our delivery methodology, we've used tools called Botium, which helps in addressing this automation testing of chatbots. Right. So we've developed now various templates, right, using Botium. And what we found is that an effort of around 25 days got reduced to a few hours using the Botium tool for testing around 3,000 odd utterances. That's the power of these automation tools. Please do reach out to us and we would definitely be happy to help, on how to use these tools, how to configure them. We do have the expertise there.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I think you will get the questions as well, Vijay. Second question by Tanmaya is, are neural networks being used in chatbots?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that question.
Are there neural networks being used in chatbots?
Yep.
So not at the moment. Again, so I'll answer this maybe a little differently. it depends on how you want to address. So if you're looking at an FAQ chatbot, neural networks really doesn't come into play, right? If you're looking at some intelligent analytics, and like we saw, right, in the future of chatbots, for maybe doing an emotional contextual answer, or maybe analyzing, detecting emotions. Now that's where the power of neural networks, deep learning would all come into picture to integrate with these chatbots to make them more intelligent. So I would say yes, there is a potential to integrate to neural networks, and definitely there have been chatbots which are being implemented that integrate with deep learning, machine learning to take the power from there and give some intelligent answers back to the bot.
I have a final question from Divya.
I'll take that. So do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, sure, if you like.
Yeah, so the question Divya has asked is, the finance sector closes by 9 p.m. and if you receive an OTP, a one-time password, how do you respond to that late in the night? So my answer is in two parts. First of all, if you receive a random one-time password on your cell phone, and this is a very India-specific question, Yolin, because this one-time password is a two-factor authentication which is used in India to authenticate bank transactions. Globally, your MasterCard, Visa card does not necessarily need a two-factor authentication, but in India, the central government or the central bank has mandated the use of a two-factor authentication. So Divya, to your question, if there is a random OTP which has come on your mobile phone and you don't recognize the reason for that, you should not be engaging in any further conversation with anybody or share that OTP. That's the first point. Second point is that this is precisely where chatbots come into play. Now, if you have engaged with a transaction on a, let's say, on a banking site or on a credit card merchant site, and you are aware of what is the transaction you're doing, and then as a response to your conversation, if you receive an OTP, that's when you do not need any human intervention. You use the password which you received to complete your transaction. I hope I was able to make sense of the two examples. One is an unsolicited two-factor authentication, which you should ignore. It could be phishing. And two is a solicited one-time password or a two-factor authentication, which you triggered. And that's what you should use to complete.
Okay. Thank you, Balaji. We have one final, well, it's really a comment in the questions box, and that's a thank you by David, who asked the NLP question. So that moves us to the next. Big thank you to both Balaji and Vijay for this great interview. I learned a lot. I think it was really interesting. Great interaction with the audience as well. So big thank you to our audience for all your answers to the Menti questions and also your questions in the question box. I hope you liked this webinar. Thank you for joining. And of course, Thijs for hosting the technical side of things.
Yeah, I was going to say that, Yolene, a big thank you to Thijs Pepping, and if you can come online and just say hi to everyone, that'll be great.
Yes.
That's very nice to hear. Thank you.
Great, Thijs, and hope to see you all in our next webinar.